So the whole conversation when when Vanita got in touch, and then the conversation for the climate Charche lectures happened. Here the entire point was about bringing in those sensitivities. Okay. So we were in our initial conversations itself very sure when both Vanita and Mansi were mentioning we need to do a hackathon and we need to apply these lectures and see solutions. I was very, very clear that don't even expect any solutions to come out from this, because today few of my students have raised certain questions. That's a big achievement. And I believe they are going to ask better and better questions. And in one of the things when it was asked that what do you want to do after your graduation, one of the students told, I want to find a job. Hopefully I find a job. Okay. But now that you guys have asked these questions, now what is it that when you say job, what does that mean to you? Is it something you're going to look at an immediate thing, or you want to go on a long-term basis you're looking at? That's your fight. Okay. But in the school, have we enabled you to ask right questions? Have we enabled you to learn? That is all we can do. Because now we have, as part of my research, I have put together this word called sustainability sensitivities. That's all we can give you. Okay. Tomorrow when you go into the practice, how you want to apply it, you always have choices. You have a choice to gain a client and compromise on your beliefs, or you say I stick to my beliefs, or you walk the Buddha's path, the middle way. Okay, so that's your choice. Every step of it you have to make that choice. Now this whole the Climate Charche series was about sensitizing you to take these choices, and I believe we are taking baby steps in that direction. And as a school, it was very happy for me to hear Aryan came and told that he remembers that in the first semester I was talking about SDGs. Now SDGs is a framework. Even at the central government level, all the government officials talk about SDGs, but how much is it they are doing it just for taking out funds? I don't know. But it's a good framework, provided you understand and use it for your own way and make sense of it. So we don't need SDGs to actually be sustainable. Okay, it's every individual's action which is going to matter. Now that action depends on how informed you are, how you collaborate, and what is the kind of action you're taking. So going forward, when we were wanting to have this panel discussion, I was discussing with Mansi and Vinita and all my colleagues as to what kind of questions should come. Then when we have been giving a thought to it, then we realized that it should be pertaining to education. Because we are in an educational institution and many of us have been dabbling with professional education, that is specifically architecture. So getting on to today's discussion, my questions will be primarily addressing climate change and sustainability in education in general and design education in particular. See, I'm an industrial designer, practicing industrial designer. So when I say design education, it will encompass architecture and all the allied creative practices. So that is something I want to highlight. So my first question is a general question to all of you. When it comes to climate change and sustainability, do you see something missing in today's curriculum in the UG programs specifically?
Okay, so since I'm visiting faculty at most places, I will take a guess at the curriculum, and I think what is missing is really, one, I feel the whole idea of sustainability needs to be unpacked and it needs to be contextualized. So I think that is extremely critical, where we talk about sustainability, and it's such a broad and a global concept, right? And it continues to remain a concept. So unless we don't start to unpack it and to contextualize, what does sustainability mean, for example, in a city like Bangalore, within the city, let's say in a neighborhood like Brookfield, within Brookfield, sustainability for the tech park that many of you have looked at, vis-a-vis the Kundanahalli lake that you have looked at, right? And these can be very different flavors. So I think really at the foundation level, beyond going the SDGs, it's very critical to then start to understand what sustainability looks like. And I think that is something that is very critical, because just to conclude, I think that sort of an unpacking and that sort of contextualization also then, of course, makes you ask questions, but when you're actually looking at a context, it allows you to frame the problem. Many a times, I think, as students, as professionals, as educators, we tend to jump on to, here is a challenge and what is going to be the solution for it? How are we going to solve it? But I think one way to, have some sort of a training is to say, how do we frame the problem? The problem framing in itself, I feel, is a larger challenge, and if you are able to crack that, then moving on to the solution is a continuum from that. So I think just framing problems, contextualizing them to a geography, to a socio-ecological and economic context, and then saying here is how we proceed from here, is something that I would kind of say is the need of the hour.
Yeah. If I could take one step back to the school ecosystem. I was leading a program called Wipro again. It's a sustainability education program for schools and colleges. And what we found that, of course, these in the curriculum itself, obviously, a deeper engagement on sustainability, climate change is definitely missing. So how do our undergrads then, do they come prepared with the knowledge on sustainability or climate change, or even awareness about these things, both at the global and at the local context? So that itself is kind of something that needs to be addressed primarily. And then, of course, at the undergrad level, I think, Anjali, we were discussing this just before this panel, that at the foundation level, how do we start looking at bringing dialogues on sustainability and climate change into the curriculum? And then I think the onus on that, there's a lot of institutional buy-in that's then required. And also at the faculty level, how our faculty take an interest in this, and across disciplines, and how do we enable that at different levels? Yeah.
So, I think I agree, we all agree with what they said. And in terms of where do we start? Like, do we look at the undergrad? Do we look at the schools? Do we look at the teachers who are teaching the students at the school level? Where do we start? Isn't it? We need to start somewhere. Can we look at it at different levels? So, at Azim Premji Foundation, we have been addressing this at different levels for a long time. So we have teacher trainings where we are kind of talking with the teachers, we are looking at the syllabus, we are trying to incorporate climate change and sustainability and all these various aspects into the syllabus, so that teachers get training, that enters the syllabus, the children from their school days, they start understanding the concepts. We have programs like the Wipro Earthian, where schools participate in sustainability programs, and they kind of at a national level come and share their projects. So we are having at different levels. In the programs of undergraduations also, we are having climate change At our center, we have got the climate change and sustainability. We have got climate change in other aspects, other programs as well. We've got major, we've got minor. So students who are doing a major in biology or physics can opt for a minor in climate change and sustainability. So environmental science and sustainability. So there are various ways in which we are trying to integrate the concepts and bringing in the climate change, sustainability, all these into our education system. One thing which we also need to see is at the government level, because many a times it is as they mentioned that the onus falls on the government to set the syllabus, to kind of ensure that what are the concepts and not just in the classroom but also outdoors. How do you bring in the education, like how you guys went out for a walk? The amount of nature education that happened during that small walk that you went with Karthikeyan was much more than what would have happened if he had shown you slides and things like that. So how do you ensure that this kind of outdoor education gets incorporated into your schools and colleges and every level of education, which is very essential. And your project, when you went out to do your project, you came back with a lot of learnings. You interacted with people, you networked with others. These are all very much part of the overall the need to build in at every level. So this is something that needs to be looked at with a fresh outlook, and I think there is an awareness that is coming up. We hope that it will kind of move forward and take on in the next go to the next level. Thank you.
So I think also taking forward, and something that I should have mentioned upfront is what I find and what I've been proposing is really this introducing the idea of the lived city as a laboratory at the undergrad level. I think, well, I would like to do it at the high school level, but if that is not, that's the first space as an adult that you engage with, you engage with the city, and that's the lived experience that you have, and I would really like to, I think that is something that is missing, and would like to introduce that as a course. So I'll go to your question back, and I think I agree with most of the points, but where is it missing in the undergraduate programs was the point. And I think there are two levels to it. One is what we want to cover, and second, which most of us academics are caught up is where to cover it, where is the space in the syllabus. So I think in what to cover, there are a couple of things. First, and which came out in what you all said about getting that space to put up questions. Often there isn't that space in our curriculum to put up the questions. So to pause and have an elective or a course like this, which gives an opportunity to not jump into solutions, as Anjali was saying, but also to pause and ask questions. Right or wrong comes later, because by asking questions itself you learn. So having that kind of space is one of the things. Other thing is to have sustainable, consistent introduction of this topic throughout 5 years, rather than waiting to inject it at the last moment, thinking that someone needs to mature to capture it. I think no, everybody matures with that idea, the idea matures with them. So it's both ways. So I think having that sustained approach or a consistent approach of having it, and that would apply for schools also. How do we ingrain it, and then have a progression in that there is an awareness building or sensitization, then skill building, then solution seeking and solution building, something like that can be designed. And bringing in the multidisciplinarity, which you have tried to do in this climate Charche, because often we get so siloed in our disciplines. If it is engineering, there would be a certain connotation and a way in which climate change or climate Charche is taken up. If it is architecture, it's a different way. So bringing a bit of multidisciplinarity at a graduate level really helps to appreciate, unlearn what you think is right or wrong, but so that kind of space is what I think can be carved out for over a period of time. And if I go to how to do it, because that's where most of the teachers or administrators of academic programs get caught up in. So these are good ideas, how do we execute them within the syllabus which we are given? I think these kind of elective courses or studios or summer winter schools are where one can probably inject it and then continue it. So these are my first thoughts on graduate, but this would apply to students or postgraduate also.
The clapping is not necessarily need to be done after every speaker. It's okay. And having a conversation, right? But I see the enthusiasm in breaking the silence sound. It's nice. So as a civil engineer, which I've been trained as fundamentally, I answer questions in the yes, no, objective type question. So that's my training. So if you ask, is sustainability being taught enough at undergrad level, I'd say no. Yeah, so that's where I'm stuck. But then I'm an urban planner and then I'm a water guy, so then I have to add a bit more. I think fundamentally at a society level, what's changed, what I see is that the way we get knowledge and information. In my day and era, it would be newspapers that would be giving me that information and data about the wider world, right? In your day and age, it's Instagram, it's social media, it's many other mediums that are providing you the additional knowledge in addition to the craft that you learn. So you're learning the craft of architecture, and fundamentally at an undergrad level, you got to learn that craft well, right? So first you design the building, you design the spaces, you design the roads well. Then, if you are interested, you learn about the need for sustainability and the need for climate change, which is hitting us as a society, right? And that can only be the personal interest. I don't think that we have a tablet get sustainability down the throat of everybody. It may not be of interest to some, it may be of interest to others. So how do we allow that choice to be made, and how do we allow others to do a deeper dive, even at an undergrad level, would actually depend on the kind of knowledge society is creating and information flows that society is creating. And I think the greater challenge is, are we doing enough in that space? On LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, is there enough of that meaningful dialogue? And the last challenge that you folks have, which like the IT have, is the whole WhatsApp university misinformation system. Right? So there are climate change deniers now, right now. Yeah, but there's no climate change. And there's a large majority of people, or not large majority, a huge minority, think that there's no climate change at all. So there's no need for sustainability or any action on climate change. How you sift information and disinformation is your challenge. And I'm glad that I don't have to make that kind of choice. So that's my take on it. And you don't have to clap.
So one very difficult thing of being a moderator for this kind of known panel is, one question of mine finished all my questions what I put in. No, that is given rise to more questions. So my next question was, when do we bring this climate change sensitivity? Okay, so there's a proverb in Kannada, Gidavagi Baggaddu, Maravagi Baggete, which means a plant, when you cannot shape it when it's a small shrub, can you shape it when it becomes a tree? Okay, so today we are doing climate Charche lectures for the 9th semester. Okay, so should it start at a much foundational level was my next question, but many of you have brought this up. Now I'll just extend that question. Can you give pointers to how? In the foundational level, say for keeping undergrad the VR course, how can we start that conversation at the foundation level?
So it's good to be part of a woman, right? Usually it's part of man levels. So I'll start from this side because I just have a speaker and then pass it on to you. I think again, I re-emphasize the fact that you have to learn the craft first. And when the craft is being learned, in that craft, a good teacher will introduce these sensitivities of sustainability and climate change with every project or every subject, right? And it could be an introduction itself, it need not be a deep discussion. It's a way of thinking that needs to be brought to the notice of the student, so that the student then says, okay, is this the lens, as was being pointed out, is this the lens that too I could look at this particular project? So we're looking one at Nagavarali, which is a final thesis project. It's an interesting, exciting project, right? And it's responding to a water system there. Would you want to also ask them climate change? Could you consider climate change in that place also as part of the project? Could be just a supplement, and it makes you think about those lines. So I think we use the framework of what the syllabus is as just a basic introduction, as a scaffolding, and on that scaffolding we build the questions that we want to ask each other. And one of the fundamental ways of learning is peer-to-peer learning. It's not a teacher-to-student learning. This day it's peer-to-peer learning, and it's the conversations we have between us, right? And so therefore, how do we frame that with the students to say, hey, it's learnability that we need to focus on, not the end product, and how to learn to learn. It's a meta-ness of it all. Do we have that skill to learn continuously, right? And so how we do that is only that can happen with a lot of interaction amongst you spend more time with yourself, with your student friends, than you do with your teachers and professors in different subjects, right? So if we can focus on that and see how we build that culture, I think that's a good way to go.
So that's a very important point what just now Vishwanath mentioned.
Generally all my points are.
How to learn how to learn. This was a very important foundational statement and thing what was worked upon when the NIT as an institution was set up. Because this was a conversation that was had between Vikram Sarabhai and Professor Kumar Vyas, the first teacher in NIT. So it's good that we keep listening to some things again and again, because they are never outdated, they never go out of, they're timeless. Okay, so this is one of the things. And all you do in a professional education is you just learn how to learn.
So, taking on from where Vishwanath left, and also you learn to learn, is something which both of us, being from the same institute, have really witnessed. That how do you learn to learn? Then you are thrown into any problem and you know how to decode it, or how to. Sorry. So I think how to bring it in, I feel sometimes there is a disconnect between what students are taught in theory subjects and what they do in studios, especially in planning and architecture, which has a format of studios and theory subjects. And that disconnect just sort of seeps in. If whatever is taught in theory is also brought into so-called practice, which they try to do through studios, or problem solving that they try to do through studios, so that's one space. And again, that has to happen consistently throughout 5 years of their time. But also in other things that they observe on campus or outside campus, it's beyond us, but on campus, what are the sustainability measures that we are sort of pushing through, insisting on, practicing. So I think it becomes then a wholesome construct which is being propagated or mainstreamed into the way we function. So I think if we reach that kind of level where it gets so ingrained into them that it's not a special tick mark that they need to do in their design or something, I think that's where one can aspire to be. And so we firmly believe, accept that it has to be part of everything we do. We may have a special course on that, a special program, definitely for those who want to really deep dive. But it's not either or for others. For others, it has to be in other courses that they do. So that's one approach one can have. Thank you.
So just to add to that, one of the things we've been consciously doing, at least in my studios, when I talk about when someone wants to use POP, for example, for model making, first thing discussion we have is why shouldn't you use POP? It might be a very small quantity that you're using to make a model. It might be a very easy material to work. But then if you get back into the chemistry of it, it's a reaction which you cannot undo. Okay, so these are the small things what they're talking about. Now next time when you're purchasing something, purchasing some stationery or doing a model, think about it, how best can I present my idea without going or without 3D printing the entire model. Now the very fact that I have to do a small model, now you make the entire model, go to a laser cutter, then cut it, which could have been done by just cutting. So these are the small decisions which will get into the practice, whether you like it or not. These become habit. Okay, so thank you for bringing up that point.
Okay, I have a question to all of you. How many of you were in eco clubs in your school? Okay, I see very few of you, but how many of you continue to kind of be engaged in those activities once you came into your, professional course? You're still. Are you? You're still? No. So this happens when we come from the school into our professional courses. You kind of have your interests other than your studies, which kind of take a backseat. And that need not happen. In terms of anything creative, because anything creative leads you back into your connect with nature, giving you new ideas, new ways of looking at things. But when you come into your professional course and kind of push all that back and just stick with your bookish information, that's where you lose on your creativity. You think twice, thrice before proposing anything new, anything different. You feel that this is the accepted kind of scope that you have, and you can't go or think or propose or kind of. So that needs to go away. And I think for that there is a need for institutions also to have things like eco clubs, a space where you kind of have social, social work in your own region. Like you go out and interact with the community, like how you did now. You went and just interacted with the community which has the tree and all that. So make it part of your thing to have cleaning drives. All these are basic kind of things which keep you connected to what is the reality outside. Go to the schools, interact with children, understand, go back to your friend. All these, if they become part of the extracurricular, not necessarily, it might not be in the curriculum, but if you kind of keep them as part of the interaction of the students, that gives you a space to kind of also keep in touch and kind of get the ideas and networking. And as I said, that is one thing which I have always believed, that you should always have a strong networking and interaction for you to be able to kind of incorporate various things.
In person also.
Yeah, in person. Yeah, not just the social media is a big thing, but you need to be in touch with communities. That is very much required. Absolutely.
It's old school.
Okay, so I think a lot of it has already been said. It cannot, the whole idea of climate change cannot be layered onto a curriculum. I think it needs to be integrated. And so it becomes, for instance, a pillar of the scaffolding itself, right? Just to take that further. But I think one way to introduce it also is through the engagement of the students consistently, and 5 years is a long time, and you have the advantage of holding that with the lived experiences. And 5 years, unfortunately, we are living through a time where every year we are experiencing it in different intensities and different forms. So how do you, for example, document those experiences? starting from the undergrad level and starting from the first year level, foundational level, to say what are the lived experiences with the built and the unbuilt, right? And how is then climate change? It's a question of mindfulness that you then bring into the studio, into the conversations, into the learning, and I think that itself is a huge advantage that a 5-year course has, when it starts to introduce it right from the beginning and holds it for 5 years and says, let's document. I'm just giving a simple example. What, as a student, what is your experience with the built and the unbuilt environment every day as you approach the university, go out of the university, engage with the larger landscape around the university or the city, and where is climate change actually? What is the climate change that you're experiencing? What are the ramifications? In a very simple language, in a very experiential sense. I think that's one way of introducing it and then ingraining it within the learning itself.
Yeah, just quickly to add on to what everybody has already said, practically what students can do, you have an internship every year that is, compulsory. So look out for organizations that are aligned to such themes, and look out for organizations who can provide that kind of opportunity for you to explore these themes, right? Not just another construction company or just another generic internship that you can do, but something that can enrich your experience around the themes of sustainability. So that's one thing, and of course look at the interdisciplinarity of it all, like how Professor Modi was mentioning, material. How do you then look at alternate materials, circularity, and all these interconnected themes around architecture and sustainability and climate change is something that you should be paying attention to, both again at the global and at the local level. How can you bring that change into your own designs and looking from an interdisciplinarity perspective? Just these 2 points.
So just to add to that one point, what is very important is that when you look at internships, we should immediately get out of this thing that I'm going to go and work in another architect's office. Because in many ways, you need to increase your footprint. Very few times where you have to increase your footprint. Otherwise, sustainability always talks about decreasing your footprint. Okay. Here you increase your footprint by building the right kind of connects. When Arathi was mentioning about, look at organizations which are working in different areas. Okay. So at the end of it, when you say whether we are architects or lawyers or such professions, it's about how many different connects have you built? Because ultimately your work is going to come from not from architects' offices. It has to come from outside. So the more connects you have in terms of with different organizations, your visibility increases and your connects increase. So this is something very crucial you have to look at, because most of you are going to go out of the school in another semester. Okay, so this is what you need to really equip yourself, that how do I increase my network in the right sense, increase your footprint. So this is one place where you have to really increase your footprint. So also coming towards my last question, this is the most important question I feel, because it was already mentioned about how will we equip our teachers to address these issues, because one of the important points what Vishwanath also raised was that at the end of it, to start with, you come to a BR course, you have to be trained as an architect. Okay, but for long, what I have come across when studios are being planned or when certain benchmark is set for the thesis projects is how much are you building? How many square foot are you building? If you don't build this many square foot, it's not worth a thesis project. I'll have to check your ability based on how much square foot you build. So to take away that mentality, we need to first bring in why not to build or how not to build. How less should you build? That I believe is a very crucial thing when it has to come to how do our teachers take it. So where do you think some pointers for that? How can we incorporate with the?
I don't think I'm qualified to answer this, but I think as teachers, there's a lot of unlearning that one needs to do, and also just, look at the current situation and keep building your capacities and bringing back, new topics into the classrooms and integrating that into classrooms. That is a tall task, I'm very sure. But also, a lot of you are already doing it. But then there are also these Tier 2 cities and the other institutes where I guess none of these, topics are reaching these, other faculty members at all. So some kind of a capacity building for those faculty members also is very important, but that's my take on it.
So Anjali already mentioned about this thing that you already mentioned about the importance of teacher training. Do you think that we need these unlearning modules regularly as a thing? Is there some other way to do it?
Unlearning for sure, and I think many of us require it, but I think the way you approach the unlearning will be much more critical, right? So how do you, for example, just to take the idea of the build and say, how do we unlearn that? The more you build, the better you are as an architect. I think just, for example, emphasizing or center staging the importance of the unbuilt that supports the build, right? So you have a building, you have a road, you have a, you're building a, let's say, a flyover, but there is a lot around the unbuilt that will be actually making the flyover, for example, successful. Or a public space, you have a built form in it, but the unbuilt itself also constitutes the public space. So I think just center staging the importance of the unbuilt component in making the built a successful component. I think that that's a lens that we don't take many a times, yeah, because you're just focusing on the four walls and the roof. So I think that would be a way to do it.
That was amazing.
I don't know. I may not be very this one in this aspect, but one thing I do know is, again, when you already have association, so instead of just trying to bring about, first is of course change within your way of looking at it, your way of kind of incorporating it, but also can such discussions happen at a larger forum, like maybe there are architects, associations, so societies, I don't know, I'm just talking off my head, but over here, if these kind of discussions are kind of initiated, and if that can become a larger change, and people might all have these thoughts, but might not know how to kind of initiate something, but somebody starts it off in such groups, or it might already be going on, I don't know, I'm just saying. So these are some things I feel would also help in bringing about a change at a larger level.
I think I'll go based on my experience of teaching. I'll go by how students perceive when we engage with them around discourses on sustainability. Earlier we used to call it environmentally safe, environmentally conscious, now sustainable, resilient. But when we talk about these concepts in studios, and we try to arrive at solutions, even in urban planning, be it streets or water networks, water systems, whatever, I think what we can avoid, and that's something I have learned, is avoid this binary of 0 or 1, that your solution is either totally unsustainable or it is super sustainable. Because there is this space between 0 and 1 which we navigate. There are some who are not too much leaning towards it, may pick up 5 points out of 15, but to encourage them to do that. Otherwise, in the process, what we end up doing is we lose them in that process. We lose their whole approach towards sustainability because we think it can be either 0 or it can be 1. So from ideal to doable is the way I would look at it, and then allow each one to their own interest and their own ability to address that within what they are doing. I think it's more of an approach rather than how to inject it in a syllabus or something. But I think this has helped many of us in navigating this space and onboarding more students into this whole idea of sustainability. So that's my experience.
So she's again talking about the Buddha's path.
So the Buddha's path is the Zen kind of thing here, right? So the nature of students and teachers, the relationship is changing dramatically. Definitely at the postgrad level, but slowly at the undergrad level, right? So this the Buddha says that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. But when the student is truly ready, the teacher will disappear. This is, at a philosophical level, it's the challenge that a student poses to a teacher which then determines what that student is taught, right? And the relationship is getting more and more democratic, or should get more and more democratic. And actually, the teacher becomes the student, because when you teach, you have to learn a heck of a lot. You know, I speak as an adjunct faculty, not as a regular teacher. The kind of homework I have to do to get before a class, for quickly Googling whatever you say, for fact checking it and then challenging you and saying you're wrong, it means that you have to change and adapt. So I think the relationship of teaching itself is changing, and it's now up to the students to challenge themselves as to what they will get from the teacher. Yeah. So I think that responsibility and maturity has to come. So that will put pressure on the teacher. The last thing that I would want to leave with, because of going on about Buddha and then I have to then live up to the same thing, is also before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. The thing is this, that it's your craft which will help you to address the goals that you want. Master the craft. You may get into a sustainable architecture practice, right? But you'll be detailing toilet doors or sinks or WCs for 1 year. That's what you have to do. You have to chop wood, carry water. Only then, after you master that, will you realize why you are chopping the wood and carrying the water. And then that goal will come from you chopping wood better and protecting the well and making sure that the coconut trees have enough water, right, in your particular case. So I think there's a process to the teaching which then need not necessarily romanticize sustainability or romanticize the practice of architecture itself. Yes, it's a damn creative field, but there is also the hard work of getting to be a master of your craft. And that won't go away. And that is what a teacher has to get into the students. And therefore, one would only urge the teacher to become a student. Yeah. Super, you can clap for that.
Okay, I would now want some questions to, 1 or 2 questions from the audience. Guys, any of you want to ask any questions? Okay, before you frame your questions, I just want to tell a small story of why it's called the Buddha's path. Because Buddha, when he was going in search of enlightenment for a very long time, he had forgot that he has to take food and water. And somewhere he collapsed without having food and water for a long time. One lady offered him milk and then he survived. That's when he decided that for me to seek enlightenment, I need food and water. So there's no extremes. So there's always a middle path. So that is what we were discussing. It's all stories here. So, questions? Yes. Can you?
I can just stand. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Dhruti. So my question is that we're talking about how not to romanticize sustainability as such, right? But when you're thought about it as such high value of concept. So how do you put it down at ground level and be like, hey, this is also like one of the major things. Like you have a brick, you have cement, there's sustainability too. So how do I come down from that level to like, okay, this is my base, this is also where I have to like look at. Even like design terms also.
I thought I would just So let me give you a small story around this. I was working in the state of Madhya Pradesh and I was in Bhopal meeting the government and the SDGs had just come in, right? And one of the officers over there in the planning department, he told me that, we are very busy, we can't have this conversation with you right now. I said, why? Because he said, we have a directive from the central government that we all have to start working on the sustainable development goals. So I said, okay, and he says, we are rehashing our machinery right now to do that. And because we have to show that this is something new that we are working on. So we are getting new capacities, new machineries, new offices, new rooms, new tables, new chairs, because that's the sustainable development wing that we are creating within the government. So I said, okay. So he says, madam, the thing is, it's as simple as this. Were we not working on drinking water before this? Were we not looking at a clean environment before this? We were doing all of it also, and we were working towards it. It's nothing new that we are doing. So to answer your question in a short, it's just how do you, it is a global concept, and there is a merit to that, right? And that is what I said right in the beginning. How do you bring it down to the local level? And it's how we are living every day that then moves us towards sustainability. The theory part of it is the goals or the framework, the way it has been framed, right? As Vishwanath said, it's a framework. How do you bring it to your everyday living? There are many pathways towards it. Behavioral change, everyday practices, the way we think, the way we conduct ourselves, and how we bring all that into our, let's say, our work and our living. Those are the larger chunks of life. So, even our recreation, for instance. What is it that we are consuming? What is it that we are then throwing out from this consumption cycle? These are some of the things, and that's how you bring it down to the local level. It's a very simple thing. It's things that we are anyways engaging with. It's just that one has to become a lot more mindful about it. That's the way I look at it. Yeah.
Any more questions? Yeah? Yes.
When you're looking at sustainability, for example, not in terms of spaces, but in terms of commodities. Now that we're all on Instagram, we shop a lot on Instagram. Every time there is eco-friendly, sustainable tote bags or whatever commodities, somehow the affordability factor of it goes down, where it is priced at extremely high places and just because it's sustainable enough. The same concept when you're trying to look at it on a much larger lenses, which is buildings or which is the art of space making, there are very few firms which are kind of looking towards CSEB and kind of using such materials. And the craftsmanship of people, like the laborers or workers who are working of it, the demand is so high because there are very few who are able to kind of deal with such materials. When we are kind of looking at this area of sustainability or space, is now the entire idea of eco-friendly or nature conscious leading towards elite. Like, can only the rich or people from upper strata afford that? If that is the case, how are we bringing it back to the ground? How are we kind of equally applying the democracy across different areas? Because now it's become all Jewish.
Who consume the most, who are responsible for climate change and unsustainable living, right? The richest don't care about the economics of a product, right? So, and it's the richest who need to be persuaded to become sustainable. If it be in terms of branding or in terms of exercise, really doesn't matter. So that's where you need to target with that kind of branding that you're talking about. The challenge is the aspiration. What happens in India and across the globe is the middle class follows the rich. An Ambani wedding has to be then, mimicked by as many people as possible, and then the people at the economic ladder who are below mimic the middle class. The key challenge is how do we aspirationally change these consumption patterns that Anjali was referring to, right? How do we make consuming intelligence the thing, not consuming the first low-cost house which was done here in Bangalore, one of the first, by architects not Kannade, or stone people, stone slab. They built a house with stone slabs of a particular kind, and then they brought the world to show how low-cost housing is done. That man in the house got so angry, saying, please don't portray me to the world as a low-cost individual. Don't bring this to me here. Right? So low-cost quickly gets associated with poor, and then there is no merit to that to be sold to those who consume it. So we need to universalize design, universalize systems. The rich and the poor should equally aspire for that. It's not happening on Instagram platforms, unfortunately. And why it's not happening is an economic question, because what happens is, let's take the example of a detergent. If a detergent manufacturer uses more phosphate, that manufacturer is externalizing the negativity of that product. Now, if I make an eco-friendly detergent, I have to internalize the negative element of it. So therefore, I am putting it into the cost of the product. The other fellow is putting it into the environment and polluting it. So therefore, eco-friendly products will be costly because you are being responsible for the environment. And so how do we break this chain? How do we make that other fellow costlier? That is the challenge, not how we make ours cheaper. Yeah. So that's the way to look at it. It's a very challenging scenario. The last point I want to make is, don't give up by branding sustainability as for the rich, even in your head, right? Ask yourself the question, how do I make it more available for the poor and people? And that find you more answers. Then the inner rejection is more saying, oh, this is anything.
Just to add one small sentence to that, that one of the ways is that we make that everyone should aspire for quality. That's very important, because quality doesn't have to be expensive. Because my own colleagues who have offices, when I say, they very openly say, if I have to do something different, it will be 3 times expensive. My question is, why should it be? As a thing. So that you enable yourself with the agency only when you start to understand how is it made, what is the economics of it, should it be expensive? So until we question that, we'll just accept the thing that this is being portrayed as expensive, eco-friendly should be expensive. It need not be. So once you start questioning it, it will happen.
Just adding to that with a very small example. So if you're making building, since you took an example of a building which is done with materials which are more expensive and therefore branded as eco-sensitive, I think we often, as designers, think about the capital that is involved in building that. But if you look at the operational part of it, there are takers who are also in the other income groups. So for example, a very small example is, very little attention is paid by designers on the plumbing inside the building. That can be made sustainable. Instead of putting a metropole for flushing, which flushes out 40 liters of water, you can put a tank there which probably takes only 7 liters, 10 liters, 12 liters. So these are small things. Maybe you want to try dual plumbing if it is possible within that building. Maybe you want to try solar lights if your context permits. So I think we often miss out on these operational aspects of sustainability, and we always try to swing between 0 or 1. So either I will make one kind of sustainable building or no nothing. But it's the space that you navigate. Depending on the client you are working for, at least infuse some elements which are possible. That would be pragmatic, I think.
So I would like to end this panel discussion by just putting across that sustainability has a different aesthetic. You need to accept it and find it, and that will be the start. So I thank all the panelists for coming now and sharing their views, and also for the previous starters which they've provoked our thoughts, and I believe this is just the beginning.